All right, Arizona Cardinal fans, this is the Red Rain Podcast, episode 203. So please, once again, I have the honor of welcoming in your host, the one, the only, the magnificent Walter Mitchell.
Oh, thank you, Kyle Little Rock, the legend Ledbetter. Sporting what looks to be a New York Mets hat.
It's New York Yankees, but it's got funky colors to it.
Wow, I saw the Mets orange in there and got fooled. But wow, Cardinals have a new head coach. We were going to come, have a show last week, but we decided let's wait until the coach is hired, and so we have a better idea of what we're talking about. And Sam texted me, "Okay, see you in September." So, but we did make it. It was 2 weeks. It was a long process, 27 days, all sorts of interviews, the Bidwillian wide net, and which every time leaves the Cardinals as the last team hiring a coach. And the whole process got sort of tricky there with this, last minute flight to Seattle to try to woo Clint Kubiak. I was fighting on Twitter that that's a good thing. I mean, okay, let's, on the slightest of chance, let's get up there. And I also made a case for Kubiak geographically. Could have been very appealing to him to be in Arizona and close to the Kubiak villa ranch, big time ranch in Texas. And Kubiak's always raved about loving a warmer culture when he was in New Orleans. And, there were things that I didn't want to count the Cardinals out. But in retrospect, to see what happened, and I have to say, the fans that were saying like this is just going to be an embarrassment, a waste of time. You're keeping, Mike LaFleur twisting in the wind. What if he backs out? All of that. So when the dust settled, and here's the other thing that was just outrageous about it was the rumor that the Raiders actually had Kubiak for dinner the night before, and a whole host of, had all this time with him. And the Cardinals jumped in, I guess, and got like an hour-long meeting or whatever it was. It seemed, like totally superfluous at that point and moot, based on what how the Raiders had access to Kubiak in ways that the Cardinals didn't. And then, the thing is that when you do something like that now, in retrospect, it smacks of anticlimax. Because what it suggests is that, our number one choice is up in Seattle. But if that backs out, we've got a plan B. And who wants to get hired as a plan B? The only thing that made sense to me was that they were going up there to, interview the top offensive coordinator, head coaching candidate, and that if they were turned down there, they were going to pivot to one of the two defensive, highly qualified, in my opinion, head coach candidates in Anthony Weaver and Raheem Morris, because then it would make sense. Like, okay, well, you went after the big fish up in Seattle for offense. So if you're coming back, it wouldn't have been as much as a diss on the defensive guys, because now you're saying, like, you're taking your top defensive candidate, and it was sort of a lesser than, okay, Mike LaFleur, you were Plan B, but you're our guy all along. Was said yesterday, which was one of the only lies in the press conference. It was a fantastic press conference. We'll talk about that. But I mean, this is the thing: is that when you do stuff like that, it's just, it not only delays the game, because think of how this could have been. The Cardinals could have gotten ahead of the assistant coach and coordinator staffing a week earlier or several days earlier if LaFleur was their guy all along. So want to turn over to you guys. Mike LaFleur has, a lot going for him. I did not think he was the most qualified of the candidates, and I'll say why later. But Sam, now that we have LaFleur, what do you think?
Well, Cardinals made it clear that after being rejected by every preferred option, including Clint Kubiak very publicly, the Cardinals were forced to settle for Mike LaFleur, simply because they were the last team with an opening, and he was the only remaining candidate with no other offers. It's interesting how many candidates like Jeff Hoffley, Jesse Minter, Campanile all accepted coaching or coordinator roles right after interviewing with the Cardinals. Robert Salah skipped his scheduled meeting to sign with the Titans. So, as we all expected and as we all knew, this is the worst job in football. They found a young guy, somewhat tested, been in the league a long time, has associated with some really, really good franchises and some excellent coaches. And as we're the last team to fill a head coaching vacancy, we'll just have to see how the last kid on the playground picked by the guy that nobody wanted to play for all puts everything together. I've said for weeks since Gannon was fired, no matter who we hire, they'll be better than who we fired. And I believe that.
Good summary. Little Rock?
So Mike LaFleur on the surface, based on resume, sounds like a bit of a dud or a less intriguing hire. But I will say, my criteria going into the coaching hire is somebody with extensive experience working with one of the 6 standard of success organizations over the last 10 years, which was obviously Kansas City, Baltimore, Buffalo, the Rams, the 49ers, and the Eagles. And Mike LaFleur, to his credit, checks those boxes for me. I feel like if the roles had been reversed and maybe they were the team hiring Jeff Hoffley or hiring Todd Monken. I know Monken had worked with the Ravens quite a bit, but that hire felt like it just was a thud for the Browns. Hoffley feels like a thud for the Dolphins. I feel like if it had been one of those guys, I would have been more down in the dumps on the Cardinals coach, but LaFleur at least has a proven track record of working with both the 49ers and the Rams extensively, has some play calling experience. I did like that at the introductory press conference, he said I would call plays, and for the most part owned up to some of the mistakes that they made with the Jets, which I will give him credit. Zach Wilson didn't turn out to be the quarterback they thought he was going to be. Now, how much you blame that on LaFleur and how much you blame that on Zach Wilson, different people can have different answers for that. But if, Zach Wilson is his best shot at having a quarterback play calling wise, then I could understand some of the shortcomings with the Jets. But he owned up to it. Monty talked about how Mike in the interviews talked about what he had learned from that experience and where some things went wrong and where things might be different this time around, which is all you can ask for when you're going to hire the coach anyways. It's better than him going up there and deflecting on his previous mistakes, so take that for what it is. If it came down to Mike LaFleur or Raheem Morris, which seemed to be kind of the two options, and I think if Morris had been offered the job, he would have taken it, given, he waited to take the 49ers DC job instead of, like Campanile and other guys who pulled themselves out of the running. I think between those two, I feel better about LaFleur than Raheem Morris. But again, I think if either had been the head coach introduced yesterday, I feel like I kind of would have felt similarly about the hire, which is part of what Sam articulated. They were either the worst job opening or the second worst job opening, depending how you feel about the Browns, and literally nobody wanting the Browns job.
Right.
And they got a guy who didn't have as you mentioned, Walter, was not the most qualified candidate to become a head coach, was not the most desired candidate to become a head coach, but I feel like they could have done worse in this hire, and it does make me feel good that they stuck to my criteria, at least for hiring a head coach, which was hiring someone with extensive experience working with one of these or two of these premier organizations in the NFL. So I'll take that with a grain of salt, and also recognize that, like LaFleur's shortcomings with the Jets, a lot of it is going to hinge on the quarterback, and a lot of it is going to hinge on the roster construction that Monty puts together and what they do with this number 3 pick in the draft. A lot of their success next year is going to hinge on those things, and we'll see if LaFleur has grown as a play caller and as a leader. I mean, he's never been a head coach, but certainly you didn't see a lot of Jets players kind of caping up for him at the end when he got fired, and they brought in Aaron Rodgers. So,
right.
We'll see how he's grown from that experience. And yeah, it's a fine hire given the circumstances. They did a fine job. It's not going to get anyone so excited, but I think they did fine.
All right. Well, for me, I had narrowed it down not to Raheem, although, I thought Raheem got screwed in Atlanta. I watched this team down the stretch. It's interesting how Gannon goes 8-9 in his second year, and everyone's all optimistic. And Raheem, who's in a building project of their own in Atlanta with a rookie, a young quarterback, and that sort of mayhem that happened that I thought they handcuffed him with signing Kirk Cousins and then drafting, Michael Penix. That was weird. You had to sort through that. But I thought he had those couple of rookie edges who started playing great. I thought his defense started coming on. I thought, Bijan was awesome down the stretch. I mean, and Pitts was starting to nail it. And Cousins played well down the stretch. They were winning games. And they just pulled the rug out from under them. And this is what happens with black coaches a lot. And this has been documented for years on end. And, the cycle yielding 0 black head coaches, 1 coach of color in Robert Saleh, is, for me, very troubling and disappointing. So my guy was Antonio Weaver. I absolutely fell in love with him. I started watching his press conferences, and plus, his qualifications, in my opinion, were superior to Mike LaFleur's, in the sense that, Weaver had, in 2024, when he came from Baltimore, where he was working with Mike McDonald together on that big nickel that they run, which I thought, if you're going to take the Mike McDonald blueprint into the NFC West, which has turned the NFC West on its ear, what a cool thing to have a guy with a big nickel coming in, and a big heart and a whole lot of charisma this guy has. And, he went from Baltimore being a really, high profile defensive coach there and defensive line coach and this and that, with tons of success, to getting the Dolphins DC job. And in 2024, top 10 defense in all the major categories across the board, and number 4 overall in total defense. That's cred for me. Now, this past year, the Dolphins screwed around. They wound up getting rid of their entire secondary. They were making late signings late into training camp. Weaver didn't have, suddenly he's like trying to train a brand new secondary. And I think that's a legitimate reason why they had a difficult start. But about halfway through the season, his defense started to click. And they went through a stretch where they won like 5 out of 6 games, only giving up like 17 points a game. And taking the Dolphins from everybody writing them off to suddenly, hey, you're on the verge of, you may have an outside shot at the playoffs. It gave them hope. So I saw something there that I thought was redeemable. They kind of crumbled a little bit over the last 3 games, although they won 1 of the last 3 games. But when I watched his tape, so I watch his tape, and then I go and I watch Raheem's, and then I go and I watch LaFleur's. And, I liked all the tapes. I liked all 3 candidates. LaFleur sounded to me, like a little too low key for what I was hoping for in a head coach. And I wondered whether he would have, the kind of impact that an Anthony Weaver would have on the team. And quite frankly, I think the Cardinals players would have loved to change the scenery and seen a black head coach. As a total departure. Because, 72% of the roster is black. And of Monty's 28 draft picks, 23 are black. That's 82%. How about giving them something a little different? How about trying something a little different? Plus, and this is the last thing I'll say about wanting Weaver, is I'm of the minority that it's the defense that we have to fix first. And that if we don't, we're still going to lose we're not going to be competitive in the NFC West. So I'm thinking you've got to have a defensive guy locked down who can take on the juggernaut, McVay, Shanahan, Kubiak, now McDonald, coaching staffs in the NFC West. So that suited my purpose really well too, is to lock down a guy who I felt could give them, a hard time. Seeing as McDonald with the same big nickel has been doing it, So I was really disappointed. I was really getting my hopes up because, and I'm writing about this at some point this week, is that it's really, when you look, and I'm doing this through photos. When you look at the Cardinals top 35 ranking employees in the organization, 34 are white and only 1 is black. And it's like, so I went and looked at the Seahawks. They have if they're 35, there's 9. The Rams, of their 35, there's 7. And the 49ers, there's 8. The disparity is just egregious in this day and age. And what I would call it is a total whitewashing of the organization since Steve Wilkes. It's just gone in that direction. Because it can't be just pure coincidence that 34 out of 35 are white. And there's no other diversity in there. And the one black employee is the chief people officer. that, this is, which is interesting because it made me want to Google, what is a chief people officer? Do you guys know?
I do not.
Public relations related, I'm sure.
Yeah, public relations and everything, which I thought was ironic when you look at it, because, if you're the one black ranking employee, how is that? How is that? If you're the one guy trying to promote diversity and you're the only one, how does that look, and how's it going to work? Now, I found it fascinating that and I think Sean Mayo, who's I think a stellar employee, I found it fascinating at the press conference that they included Sean Mayo in the search process. So, and then I raised the question to me, well, as a chief people officer, wow, that's pretty high ranking if you're going to include him. And I think that's really good. But I think it also is not a reflection of what your, front office looks like, or what your top personnel is. And, and I'm saying this for the sole purpose of wanting to do what's best for the players. If you're a part of the players colorblind to this, I don't think there's any chance in the world they're not. Or they are, colorblind to this. I'm sure that they, look around and go, geez, all the top ranking, put it this way, all the top employees in the Cardinals that are the decision makers, the real decision makers, are white. There's not a single coordinator that's black. There's not, and it looks like, again, it's going to be another whitewashing on the staff. If Wink Martindale comes in, and and the talk of now Nathaniel Hackett as offensive coordinator, and they're getting, I think LaFleur has already landed his buddy from the Jets, the special teams coordinator. It's just a whole lot of, to think that this is just some cosmic fluke. And when you see it in the photos, and I'll be outlining this at some point this week, I've been putting it all together just as a montage of faces. It's just staggering what you see. And, so my heart was set on getting Weaver for a number of reasons. One was I thought he was the most promising and the most qualified. But two was, it'd be nice to have a change of scenes, particularly to, make up for the, Steve Wilkes debacle years ago that I still really sticks in my craw how that happened to him in Arizona. So yeah, it was disappointing. Now, I was disappointed, but I pledged out on Twitter that I was going to keep an open mind. There are things about LaFleur that are very like Kyle said. And Kyle targeted this kind of the way the Cardinals did, is, let's take from one of the, albeit he was an apprentice. That was the one thing you could point to as most positive in his qualifications. But all right. And yeah, the Jets situation, I think you could sort of, mitigate that to a degree, although, Zach Wilson was the quarterback that Mike LaFleur wanted and banged the table for. So you got that. And then you thought, well, if he's going to pick our next quarterback of the future, the one time he's done it, and here's the other thing. Look at the quarterbacks he's had success with. They're all veterans. he hasn't developed a quarterback in his whatever years. He had C.J. Beathard. He didn't work out in San Francisco. He had Zach Wilson. He didn't work out in the Jets. So, that made me nervous, to tell you the truth. That made me nervous. Now, has he learned a ton? I mean, he said one thing in the press conference yesterday is the worst play is the late play into the huddle. Hallelujah. See? So things like that. I imagine he's got a reservoir of knowledge built up between working for Shanahan and McVay. And I thought, he absolutely crushed his presser yesterday. I was so impressed.
I agree.
The first time I've seen a non-BS press conference in frickin' years. The only person who lied was Bidwell, and he just stepped aside, which was great. And he had Monty up there. I mean, I think that LaFleur was so good, he actually calmed Monty. The last time we saw Monty, he was stumbling and bumbling over his words and could hardly talk. Yesterday, he was a lot like LaFleur. I mean, and LaFleur and his rapid fire messaging.
Yes.
I mean, that is modern day. That works with athletes. Is the speed in which, I thought, he was like Eminem. I mean, he never tripped on a single word. He was like, it all unraveled. And I have to tell you, I went and saw presses of him. I wanted to be turned on by him. I thought his presses was kind of low key and, he looked smart. He answered questions well. It just wasn't like, is this the leader of men kind of thing that you talk about? But yesterday, boy, if I had seen that, and if I had known this Cardinal connection and how this is kind of fate for him, and this was illuminating, given that what are the odds that he was on both teams, coaching on both teams that got relocated to Arizona? That to me really, if I had known that context too, I would sort of be like, whoa. And telling his wife a few years ago, I'm going to be the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. That all hit me, as such a positive. And the fact that he looks like he's one heck of a communicator. And the background with Central Michigan, that all that with his dad and his brother, all that just resonated with me so strongly that I kind of wished I'd known this all along. But it wasn't something I was going to be able to pick up on Google or anywhere that I was looking. And now that I know it, I get it. Sam, your reaction to the presser?
Well, I agree. I was very impressed. It's easy to be impressed with a clean slate press conference. Let's see how he does after their first loss. But I can't remember a better opening coach announced press conference than what we saw yesterday. And I didn't see it. I listened to it.
Yep.
And at many times I thought I was listening to Sean McVay.
Yep.
He was excellent. And I love the fact that his parents were there.
Yes.
I like the fact that his brothers were there. And I think it means a lot to the whole family to have this opportunity. And I think that's really important. And I was very, very impressed with him yesterday. He was polished. He absolutely, he was very straight on with a lot of questions. He did a good job sidestepping the Kyler Murray questions. But this is a coach who's learned coming from a couple prolific coaching trees like the Shanahan McVay tree. I mean, McVay tree is pretty impressive. Got some very successful coaches. I mean, Liam Cohen, even Jed Fish, who coached U of A for a while, came out of the McVay tree. So I think they wound up with as good as we were going to get, and I wasn't disappointed in the press conference. I was immediately disappointed in Jonathan Gannon's opening press conference because He's just throwing out a bunch of bromides and things he had heard on other press conferences. This is a kid who I think has done his research. I think he has a plan.
Yep.
I think he has some good ideas. And, it comes down to who his staff is going to be. And again, Bidwell saddled him with the last phone call to go get position coaches. There aren't a lot of them remaining. We're going to get a first-time defensive coordinator too, just like we did last hiring cycle here. We're going to get a bunch of newbies in new positions. Maybe they can bring in a Jim Schwartz, which would be unbelievable. Yeah. Maybe they can bring in Wink Martindale, who's looking to get back into the league. Right. I think they're probably going to bring in this. I think he's going to bring in this Aubrey Pleasant, who is the defensive coordinator or defensive passing game coordinator for the Rams. And again, assistant head coach for the Rams. He's black.
He is.
He, another guy from the McVay coaching tree. He did a terrific job with the passing game, the defensive passing game. He worked with Jalen Ramsey. He's worked with Marcus Peters. He worked back in the day with Aqib Talib. So,
yes,
again, a young coaching staff. Again, I'd rather see a Jim Schwartz. I don't think he's going to take the job. And then I don't know. I've never been impressed with Martindale. He's floated around too many times. I'd rather see them in this instance, give a young guy, Aubrey Pleasant, a shot over Martindale. But there are not a lot of options left, and he's worked with Pleasant. I think that would be a good connection. We're just going to have to get used to the fact that this is the sixth straight head coach we've hired who does not have permanent NFL head coaching experience. Bruce was temporary head coach for the Colts, did a great job. In fact, he was so good, they made him, I think he was NFL Coach of the Year, but he never had a permanent head coaching job. So again, we're back in the situation where we don't have anybody with some experience. Let's hope he can cull together a staff with more experience than the last inexperienced staff. And, but I was very impressed. To answer your question, I was very impressed with him in his first press conference. Very impressed. I feel sorry for him, but I'm rooting for him, right?
Yeah.
And, I wanted a head coach with experience who would manage Monty and Bidwell. Well, that's almost too quixotic and almost ignorant in expectations. And it all comes down to expectations with this coaching staff and with this squad. I mean, with all the daunting issues facing this team, starting with its quarterback, we will face this season the fourth most difficult schedule based on strength of schedule on the 25 regular season winning percentage of their opponents. I mean, we as Cardinal fans are definitely going to have to manage expectations this year. I don't know how we're going to do in the division, but if we see a defense that can tackle, if we can see an offense where the plays are called to respond to what a defense is giving us, and really put some things together. I don't know who the quarterback's going to be. I have a feeling it's going to be Jacoby, and I'm fine with that. But if we can move the football and we can be competitive in these division games, that's really all any Cardinal fan can ask for this season. So it really comes down to always managing expectations, especially in an early tenure for a coaching staff without the previous experience in each role. So I think it's up to us fans to really manage how we respond to this guy, give him an opportunity. I'll just say it. This next season's a throwaway season unless we see growth and competence. And if we have growth and competence and competitiveness, I'll be happy with that.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that. first before I kick it over to.
And I have to also add too. LaFleur is very likable.
He is.
At no time did I ever
look
at Jonathan Gannon and go, "Oh yeah, that's a likable guy."
Right.
That he's a knucklehead.
Yeah, he came in saying, I pride myself in being authentic and speaking from the heart, and A+ on both being that. And here's the thing, I just want to, plant this seed while it's fresh in our minds, because you brought up a huge point about we wanted an experienced guy who could kind of take control of, be the adult in the room, and the guy who's really going to lead this team out of the doldrums. And there were times yesterday when I started to realize we could actually have that with LaFleur. Let me tell you why. First of all, so far he's no BS. The way he handled the quarterback question, I mean, he had me earlier, but that just, was a slam dunk. Perfect answer. We're going to evaluate all the positions, which is what any coach should say. That's the smartest. He said so many smart things. He said he talked to Kyler. He respects his game. Perfect. But then, given the question, he said, no, I'm getting to work today, and already we're gonna break down every position. But here's the thing: what he has hanging over Bidwell and Monty, and he did a great job thanking them and sort of explaining how Michael Bidwell loves Arizona. He wants a winner. He's saying that I'm sure that felt good for MB. And then for Monty saying all these guys texted me how wonderful Monty is to work with. That was Monty looked like a change guy sitting there. And I think Monty probably realized early on, oh shit, I think I've screwed up this whole Gannon thing. And now he's got a renaissance of sorts, a rebirth at the position with a guy who's already sitting, touting his praises, but what he has hanging over him is, this is how the Rams do it, and this is how the 49ers do it.
That's right.
So, when he gets in a meeting and he's like, listen, let me tell you why we need to do this. This is what Sean McVay would do. This is what Kyle Shanahan would do. And, and maybe they get on their best behavior too. Maybe the whole BS deception game stops, which as dragged the Cardinals down into the doldrums as much as anything else. Is there's no integrity in how they handle themselves, and how they try to bullshit the fans through the media. It's just awful. So, Kyle, what do you saw the pressers, and I'm curious to know, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I had to watch it on a delay just because I was working at the time, but I caught up on the whole presser situation. Sam outlined kind of my big takeaways, and I also mentioned earlier that taking accountability for the shortcomings with the Jets was something that I kind of appreciated from him. And there's all the interpersonal stuff, like you said, his family being there and stories about his connection to Arizona and going back to Central Michigan and everything that happened with his family, all that stuff, makes you feel good. Obviously, connections with the LaFleurs and the Salas and that whole coaching tree and everything else. But the biggest apprehension for me is that in his one time as an offensive play caller, it was a pretty bad failure. And in his other stops, like you had mentioned, Walter, he was essentially a protege or like a glorified quarterbacks coach.
Right.
Wasn't calling the plays.
Right.
Offensive coordinator by title more than anything else, which is not necessarily a deterrent. I mean, I had talked before, like if the Browns had hired Nathan Scheelhaus instead of Todd Monken, I feel like I would have been like, oh, great job by them. What a way to make, diamonds out of shit, So but again, that's just because Scheelhaus doesn't have that blight on his resume of LaFleur having such a poor time with the Jets. And that's sometimes where, experience works against you, or at least it works against you in the interview, and it works against you in your public perception. And, looking back on it again, you could say it was Zach Wilson's fault. You could say LaFleur didn't develop Zach Wilson right, and there's no right or wrong answer. We don't really know kind of what went into that failure with the Jets, but you look back at that draft class, and Trevor Lawrence was going to be the number one pick. So of Wilson, Lance, and Fields, none of them really worked in the NFL. So I guess, maybe you feel a little better. It's not like, they quote unquote misevaluated the talent so much as like none of those quarterbacks really panned out at the top of that draft class. Which could be partially the organizations that they went to, and that's all part of it too. But that was the bigger concern for me, and I felt like he just took accountability for it. And honestly, that's kind of the way to go. And again, from the football side, I like that he's announcing he's calling plays. I hadn't heard the Nathaniel Hackett part of it, which I guess makes sense because that was the quarterbacks coach with Rodgers at the Jets. I feel like if you're going to call plays, LaFleur being the one to call plays, I feel like you should go young on the offensive coordinator and someone who maybe hasn't been in the offensive coordinator role before, just because it is, essentially a glorified quarterbacks coach who gets the chance to work with all the position groups and things like that. And then you go experience on defense. Wink Martindale, again, it's not the sexiest hire, but given the state of the Cardinals organization right now and all these DC jobs that are getting filled elsewhere, I don't think Wink Martindale is the worst you could do at this point. I'm trying to think who else is even, available who has extensive coordinating experience that would be willing to take the Cardinals DC job right now. And another name isn't coming to mind, but Walter, you talked about experienced coaching, and I feel like, maybe that's good for a position coach at this point, but specifically for that OC job, I would try and hire someone younger who doesn't have a ton of experience in that position, because there isn't the expectation of play calling right away. And then you can add other, more senior assistants across your offensive coaching staff. So that was kind of my biggest takeaways outside of, all the interpersonal stuff that Sam had kind of outlined.
Yeah. One of the things that, and thank you for that. That was really well said. One of the things that's awkward now is that he's interviewing the remaining coaches from the previous staff. Please no. Please. And again, this is what Bridwell does. He plays delay a game. He's the last coach last GM or owner standing. And now the pool of other coaches is thinner. But this was a 3-win team coached by amateurs. And I'm sorry, but that's got to stop. And these there's maybe Ben Steele, the tight end coach, who's so good with McBride. But beyond that, Justin Fry, I thought he did better and better as the year went on, but I'm not comfortable with his lack of experience. And if I were, in Mike LaFleur's ear, I'd say go grab one of the best offensive lineman coaches, like a Kubiak did, bringing Rick Dennison as your OC. You're going to call the plays. Get the best offensive line guy you can. And, there are guys out there right now who jump at the up. Look at what Clayton Adams did. He took it. You're going to get paid more. It's a more glorified thing. And now you're also, when you become a coordinator, you become a head coaching candidate. It's just the way it goes, so it's an attractive job to anyone who's running an offensive line. So do that. And someone with obvious experience and success. That would be huge. And maybe retain Justin Fry as a assistant line coach. Although I wouldn't do it myself, but if you feel you owe it to him, then that's fine. Or actually you can retain him as the offensive line coach, because the offensive coordinator is actually the offensive line coach. So you can do it that way. And that would feel better to me. As long as there are mentors, and so as long as the more experienced guys are calling the shots and the ones who have the gravitas to do it. I can't blame Justin Fry. He came from college. It's not instant gravitas with pro football players. You look at that and go, okay, yeah, but and I think early on it was so obvious this offensive line didn't get off the ball anywhere near the way they did under Clayton Adams. Right from the first play of the season, it was so obvious, and that's what happens. I mean, when you bring in a novice, a newcomer, and without the gravitas of guys to get off your butts and get off the ball. So there's that factor. And that's such an awkward position for a new coach to be in, because I'm sure he feels for the guys who are twisting in the wind there. But at the same time, he's got to be true to himself, and he's got to if he does this true to himself, he's going to be letting a lot of guys down, and Bidwell's put him in that situation. And it sucks. And the biggest one out there is Rallis. I mean, who, in my opinion, ought to go to Green Bay. And Sean Dugan went with Hafley, the linebacker coach, down to Miami. Perfect. The linebacker job's open in Green Bay. Go and join, Gannon again as your tandem. Would be, I think, perfect for him. Although, if I were advising him in his career, I'd get away from Gannon and learn a different defense. And even if you need to be an assistant linebackers coach for a year or whatever, to behind Fangio or somebody really, really good, that could be a game changer for Rallis. Because I think he's a bright young coach. I just think he got stuck in a system that was so passive, it was just destined to fail. But and I don't think that's necessarily his shtick. Was Gannon's defense. The other thing is that personnel wise, it's going to be really interesting to see what LaFleur has in mind. Starting with the quarterback position. I got the overwhelming sense that Kyler's going to be up for trade. The way that this was handled yesterday, and on the radio, he kind of, indicated we're going to be evaluating the positions and everything. I'm just so relieved and happy. I would have just been, he would have lost all credibility with me if he came in and said, yeah, we're going to give it a go again with Kyler. That would have that's it. Because, and I'll say this, is any real football guy who understands the psychology of players and the morale of teams could not look at Kyler Murray and go, he fits both, like he's got the right quarterback psychology. And you can't look at the Cardinals locker room and point to, yeah, he's got all those guys in the locker room as, their number one fans, and they're rally behind him. Neither of those cases are true in Arizona. Couldn't they be true somewhere else with a fresh start? Who knows? I mean, maybe once Kyler, but wherever he goes, Kyler's got to, come to grips with how much he's willing to sacrifice on the football field to win for his team. And there are times when, quite frankly, he was Pat P out there. He was. I think he was the offensive version of Pat P, playing on his own terms, and on his own terms when things mattered most, and couldn't get it done. So, will that change somewhere else? Now, if he has a head coach with the gravitas or whatever he has a respect for or whatever, or someone brings it out in him, that might be a different story. But as for right now, in the Cardinals, after 7 years, we can't financially or psychologically think that Kyler, great, Mike LaFleur, I'm in. Oh, no. Kyler wants out, and he should be given a trade at this point. And he's been embarrassed twice, right? Homework clause, silent benching. There's no coming back from that. And it shouldn't still be a topic, but it is. All right. So I want to talk about a couple things LaFleur mentioned that I thought were really key. And gave me a lot of hope, is his said many, many times, we're doing this for you, the players. You are what matters. And the sincerity of that, and of how he said it time and time again, smacked me as very, very meaningful. Is this being his MO, and that's why it gave me hope too. Is this making it about the players, and making about what's best for them, and developing the relationships with them. Sam, what did you think of that?
Well, I liked it. I thought it might resonate with players on this team who have not been coached up, who have been made to look like incompetent fools based on offensive and defensive schemes. I know we've got a bunch of kids on this team who know how to tackle, but we didn't see that last season.
Right.
So I think, it was a very much of a LaFleur mention. His brother talks like that about the players. It wasn't a lot of bravado. There wasn't a lot of rah posturing like you got with arrogant Gannon.
Right.
I think LaFleur, he spoke from the heart. I think it was leading the team. I think, listen, if he doesn't have a strong relationship with his players, he's done. Right. Players have to respect him. He's going to have to earn their respect because he hasn't been a head coach. He can't point to a resume and say, look what I've done at other places. Things are going to be better here. I know what I'm doing. He's going to have to prove it. And so he owes it to the players to provide the best staff and an improved roster to help them succeed. That's something he's going to have to convince Monty and the worst rated owner in the league based on his players' opinion. And he's going to have to overcome that. So and he's been around enough strong locker rooms with enough strong leaders to see how that's done. And hopefully it's rubbed off. And I think his brother has a really solid relationship with his players too. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that's going to work here.
Yeah, me too.
These kids need coaching to get them to the next contract, to get them a raise, to get them an opportunity, if it's not with the Cardinals, with another team. These kids want to be coached. They want to be coached up. They want to see that they're improving. And then if all that equates to wins, that's even better.
Yep. So I wanted to address another thing that Kyle was talking about and then kick it over to him for follow-up on this. Defensive coordinator. what I'd love to see, there's Aubrey Pleasance would be fantastic with a mentor. The other guy to watch is Dino Vasso.
Yep.
D-back coach for the and there's another coach who's Kyle. Can you look this up? Who's their Ulrich? Another guy they're talking about. Who's their defensive assistant who's key to them? I think a linebackers coach or something. But
In
Dino
Atlanta,
Vasso. What's that?
In Atlanta or Houston?
Houston.
Oh, okay.
So Dino Vasso, let me just elaborate on him. He is maybe the best defensive back coach, assistant coach right now in the NFL. Look at the job he's been doing with Stingley and Kwame Lassiter. We're all licking our chops. Look at watching Lassiter play and ball like he did against us. I mean, and the way that those guys tackle, the way they storm alleys and get to the football and swarm. Dino Vasso is on a fast track. I mean, and he's becoming well known around the league. If you can grab him and grab a mentor, how about Ron Rivera? I mean, I think Ron Rivera how about Pete Carroll? I mean, or how about Wink Martindale? Fine, as a mentor. Fine. And
seeing the Texans staff. So is it Rod Wright is the defensive line coach?
No.
Corey Undlin.
There it is. Corey Undlin.
Defensive passing game coordinator.
Correct. These two guys, I mean, the way that, and look at the safety play they got from Bullock and Petrie. I mean, that secondary was, a model of greatness this year in so many games. So grabbing one of those two architects, and they're really good teachers. And I prefer Dino Vasso because I just love his style. I watched him some video of him coaching, and he would be a slam dunk hire in my opinion. So you get him in there with an advisor, and there's some good advisors. Any of the three that I just named would be great. I prefer Wink being an advisor because at Michigan, he surprised me. He played too much zone. And the fans got restless of that. It was kind of like with the Eagle fans. They were like very upset with the kind of heavy zone use. Now, when you have a Will Johnson, who's a zone player deluxe, that's, and he did his first year at Michigan. So, sometimes you have players who look like they're better in zone than man. But Michigan's used to pressing and being in people's faces in their back end. It wasn't happening there. They weren't terrible. They were 23rd in the country in points and like total defense this past year. But for Michigan, you're a top 10 or you're gone. And that's why he's out. But looking back at his NFL career, he has a tendency, he's a big blitz package guy, and a lot of switch between 3-4 and 4-3 twists. And then he's been pretty successful with press man on one side, zone on the other. Sometimes press on both sides, sometimes zone on both sides. So he's got a lot going for him. But at the same time, if you can get one of these younger guys, and let's break the ice. Let's get a coach of color in here. I think it would mean a lot to the players. I really do. They're deserving of it. And, and Ron Rivera would be tremendous. He could be just advisor to everyone with a first-time head coach. I think that would be fantastic to bring him in as such. And Ron Rivera, people are like poo-pooing Ron Rivera. Ron Rivera is one of the great coaches of the last 25 years. Look at what the job he did with Cam Newton. I mean, whoa. I mean, he had Cam as an MVP level, which for me and some others, I was always kind of surprised at that. And then his defenses were always, they kicked the shit out of the Cardinals every time he played them. And Luke Kuechly was awesome in their middle. His linebacker plays were awesome. We need good linebacker coaches, to get our linebackers up to snuff. So, that would be, I think if we can get a younger guy with a mentor, that'd be ideal. And, Kyle, what's your thought on
that? The first part I would say is you had talked about getting, people with coaching experience in the door. And at this stage of the game, state of the organization and state of the coaching hires, you're not going to get your first choice, your second choice, your third choice. Although I will say, I keep saying this, Marvin Lewis lives down the street from the facility. Why do you not just...
Yes.
Just give him a key card. Doesn't even have to have a title. Just
let him card. Definitely.
Get I've never understood why they don't just ask Marvin Lewis to hang out and throw him, a little bit of money here or there. I've never understood. Well, he went to the clearly he went to the Raiders for a season and was a senior defensive assistant for the Raiders. I've never understood when he literally lives in your backyard. But again, that's besides that point.
And another guy that's out there is Antonio Pierce.
Sure.
I've seen him dial up some great game plans, and he's an aggressive coach. He could be DC. I'd sign up for that, or advisor. I'd sign up for that,
or a defensive pass game coordinator, run game coordinator, something like that.
Exactly.
I think that's a bigger part. I was less familiar with Dino Vasso before you had brought him up, but across the board, great job in Houston across the board with a lot of young players. The Cardinals, we know, have talent in the cornerback room. Offer him the DC job and see if he's willing to accept. I think I saw he interviewed for the Titans job just when I was looking him up briefly, and that obviously went to Gus Bradley. And the second point you mentioned up, which is having, black assistants in positions of power, is not only does it help your locker room, it just helps your organization.
Yes.
The unity of thought and the having people who come from similar backgrounds working in the same positions often leads to less strong results. Besides the idea of it'll formulate a good locker room and a better culture, you'll get better results from what you're doing too. And your organization will have stronger culture. I think part of, from Bidwell at the top, you can only control so much, but Bidwell is the one putting certain people in positions of power with either quid pro quos or terms and conditions of their hires, which is how you lead to a staff of, like you said, of your 35 most powerful people in the organization, 34 of them happen to be white. That is how that ends up happening. And I just think you look at just making diversity of thought part of your organizational thought process will lead to better results. Certainly couldn't hurt the Cardinals since they are not in that position right now. And that doesn't mean you have to go hire Dino Vasso or whatever else, but you should not have to constantly convince yourself or bite your nails trying to convince people that this is the right way to go. And by the way, that part of, you mentioned the lack of non-white head coaches in the NFL from this hiring cycle is in part because these quarterback coaching jobs and offensive coordinator jobs don't go to candidates who are not white. And then those people end up being the ones who progress. So if you get a Dino Vasso in the door, or you get one of these first-time running backs coaches or wide receivers coaches into your coordinator role, and you have success, then those candidates become head coaching candidates, and you have new D'Amico Ryans or a new Brian Flores or the nice young up-and-coming assistant coach with a proven track record of success. All of that to say, who knows who the Cardinals are going to end up hiring. Maybe it'll end up being Wink Martindale, and they'll go with a senior defensive coach who has 20 years of experience in the league. But, that doesn't necessarily... You say Wink Martindale, and I say, well, if it's the best you can do, he was a defensive coordinator, 2 years ago with the
Giants.
With the Giants. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, hey, at least he's got recent defensive coordinating experience, and
Absolutely.
maybe you just say he missed out on the last cycle. But
absolutely,
one of the most encouraging, when we're talking about finding an experienced position coach, one of the most encouraging rumors I've heard is the conversation surrounded Jim Schwartz. With 17 years of DC experience and a previous head coaching job, he is without question the most qualified veteran remaining.
Right.
And it's interesting. There's a Dino Vasso connection because he began his coaching career with Schwartz in Philadelphia.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a Schwartz-style defensive mind. But, I think it would be important for them to bring in some experienced coach to clean up this mess we have on defense.
Right.
I'm trying to think the available DC openings right now. The only playoff team I can think of that's still trying to fill it is the Steelers, I think, which, maybe Jim Schwartz says I'd rather go coach Pittsburgh than,
Sure he will.
Arizona or Las Vegas or one of these first-time coaches.
Just like Gus Bradley, when he knew he wasn't going to get a head coaching gig, he didn't want to be DC for the Cardinals, and it's the same with the ex-Atlanta coach who took the job with Shanahan. Of course, they're going to
Raheem,
the top. They're anywhere but here.
We learned all we needed to know about Gus Bradley. Turning down more money and the chance to call his own defense to be,
with Saleh,
Robert Saleh's, right-hand man.
Yep.
As a non-play caller.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, at this point in his career, I guess that's what he's up for. And so I think we dodged a bullet there. But it's fascinating to me, but given the choice, I mean, I think as long as we can get an experienced defensive advisor who's called plays and game plan before and have him in the building, I would go with Dino Vasso like that.
Mm-hmm.
I would go with Dino Vasso. That would be a major coup. Around the NFL coaching circles, people would be like, ooh, credit the Cardinals on this one. Because that guy, he's got something special going there. And that's something you can build on. And I think that guy's on a fast track to becoming an NFL head coach. Just, and the way that, and the people he's worked under, like Sam just said, he started with Schwartz. Now he's under D'Amico Ryans. I mean, he's got a really good background going, and man, can he coach. And we need someone to make sense of the 7 cornerbacks we've drafted in the last 3 years. Please.
I think that's kind of the big difference too between this time and Gannon is that you can see the talent. You can see the young talent that they have acquired and has showed promise.
Right.
And is looking for development. And whether that's Vasso with Ron Rivera or Vasso with Wink Martindale or Vasso with
Pierce,
Marvin Lewis.
Yeah. Pete Carroll. I'll tell you this, having seen him in his clinics. Pete Carroll is he's in the Mount Rushmore, in my opinion, of defensive back coaches in the last 30 years. of football anywhere. I mean, Belichick, Saban, Pete Carroll, and Dino Vassell.
And randomly Wink Martindale somehow, I know. It's crazy.
But, I mean, those three, they all cut their teeth as defensive back coaches. And I mean, and then turn into tremendous defensive coordinators and game planners and whatnot. And all three are tremendous teachers of tackling. They probably all three be on the Mount Rushmore of greatest defensive coaches for tackling. And not only the way that they taught it, I mean, they brought in experts. They took and they teach it the right way fundamentally, so it's the safest way. And they do the reps on that so often that it becomes muscle memory. So, yeah, I mean, I'd love to see them go in that direction. But if they end up hiring an experienced guy at DC, that's going to be fine too, because we need that. We need the combination, or at least an experienced guy who knows what he's doing to take on these high, voltage offenses. So yes, to wrap it up, Mike LaFleur made a fan of me yesterday. It's just one day, but if the tone that he set is what, and I said there was much a tone with the front office there that I thought was really, really valuable, and to the point of Bidwell giving flowers to LaFleur's all over the place to start the meeting and everything. That was all just really, really encouraging. And now if we can get a good staff going that's hopefully a little more diverse than what we've been accustomed to, because for the players' sake, I mean, it helps. I mean, sometimes you need people around you who are more reflective of you, to be your mentors and stuff. Sometimes that really rubs off. Now we've got to be talking about highly qualified guys, no matter what their race is, and that's what I'm talking about. I mean, that it's the qualifications plus adding to the diversity of our staff. And if you look around the NFC West now, I mean, Shieldhouse is going to be the OC in LA, right?
I would imagine so. I mean,
right?
I don't think there's any hot offensive coordinator they're clamoring to hire right now.
Right? Who's the DC in San Francisco now?
Our buddy Raheem.
Raheem Moore.
I mean, when the Phoenix crew were hyping the dream team of LaFleur as head coach and Raheem Morris as DC, I mean, they wound up being right about LaFleur, but I mean, my initial reaction: why would Raheem Morris be Mike LaFleur's second fiddle if he's a head coaching candidate?
Yeah, that would be insulting to Raheem Morris.
I mean, I never imagined that he would do that, and he did. And he had a plan B ready, which was to jump right over and be the new Robert Saleh, which is perfect for him because maybe he reinvents himself and is part of the cycle next year if he does a great job with quite a talented lineup there. And then in Seattle, you got Durde as the DC. So, I mean, you've got diversity on the staffs at the key parts. There's a coordinator of color in each. But then, and maybe that starts to take effect with the Cardinals so that they can rejoin the 21st century when it comes to diversity and across the board. And, that'd be nice. So Parting shots. Sam.
Well, I wish our newest scapegoat the best.
Yeah.
I really do. And I'm excited for him, but I need to manage my expectations, as all Cardinal fans do. 26 is going to be a difficult year. And we're going to know right away by March 15th what's going to happen at the quarterback position. And that will dictate in terms of cap efforts, in terms of signing free agents, not signing our leaders like Connors and Buddha as a result. We're going to find out exactly just what kind of mess Monty and Mike stuck this young guy with.
Yep.
And then let's hope it's uphill from there. I'm not expecting big things with the staff. Again, I'd be happy if he brought in a guy, a solid black coach like Aubrey Pleasant, with whom he's worked with. Think about it. You've got a big hole in the Rams offense, and then if Pleasant comes over, a big hole in the Rams defense. You got Kubiak leaving Seattle. So all these teams have to replace really good coaches.
Yes.
And we've got some good insight into the NFC West because of the LaFleur hire. And I think if we bring in Pleasant or someone else who's been in the NFC West, I think that'll be strong. I mean, we could go get the kid in Seattle who is being tutored by McDonald. There's also Zach Orr, who didn't do a very good job with the Ravens defense, but he was a DC there last season. He's being considered for the Cowboy job and a few others. In fact, he was interviewed by the Chargers, wasn't hired.
Right.
But that's an up-and-coming name too, Zach Orr. So it'll be interesting to see how the staff evolves. Again, there's no reason not to have mentors across the board. And we didn't do that last time. Maybe we learned something from it, but we'll see. And as Cardinal fans, we just got to keep our fingers crossed. And I'm rooting for LaFleur, and I'm rooting for all the kids on this squad whose development has been certainly not improved, but hopefully we'll get somebody in there, especially on defense, to put this thing together. And listen, I'm thrilled we have an offensive coach, because every team in our division has shown they're capable of putting up 30-plus points against anyone except each other and the Cardinals, of course. But we've got an offensive-minded coach. We always flip-flop back and forth between defense and offense. Now we've got an offensive coach. And I think it's going to be very, very important, because this is my final thought. We will be picking a quarterback next season. And I think it will be very high in the draft. And we need a really smart offensive mind to develop that kid.
Beautiful. Your tan's looking good, man. How's things on the course?
Not as good as the tan. Tan is about the only positive thing I'm taking from the course these days.
You going to the waste management?
Never again. I haven't been for years. I always went on Thursdays. It was a lot of fun. I'm too old to watch a bunch of drunk kids falling up and down. That golf tournament, as wonderful as it is for raising money, that is a golf tournament is an embarrassment to golf. In my opinion.
Wow.
In my opinion. If I were a player, I would never play in it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That stadium hole is oh my God.
The 16th, the island.
If it were just the one hole, it would be a novelty, and okay, I could accept it. But it's like that on every hole. And it's like being in the center of New York on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
It's in Times Square New Year's Eve. They got everybody in a pen, and the only thing you want to do is get out of there, and it's an hour and a half to do it.
Oh,
stay home, kids. Stay home, kids. Get drunk on campus. Don't come here.
New Year's Eve is way tamer. Way tamer.
Yeah.
But and so before we let you go, what's your Super Bowl prediction?
Well, I'll just say this publicly. It's bittersweet that the Broncos are not in this Super Bowl, because I'm still not over the last Super Bowl. The Broncos got run off the field by the Seahawks. I think the Seahawks are going to have their way with the Patriots. I'm rooting for the Patriots, believe me. I want the Patriots to win. I don't see it.
Got you. All right, thank you. And have a good weekend. It'll be fun. I like watching the Waste Management from afar. And I like focusing on the golf, not the fans. So it's good to see golf again, too. In the frigid weather, we're getting bombarded, man. We got to leave our faucets running at night. It's been so cold. It's welcoming to watch golf on TV. All right, Kyle, parting shot from the Little Rock.
It's fun to watch sunny San Diego and sunny Arizona instead of being in freezing New York or New England.
Yep.
Well, similar to Sam, good luck to the latest scapegoat. Although I will say I would like to get paid $20 million to potentially be scapegoated by the Arizona Cardinals. So I don't feel too bad for him. He got a 5-year contract, which I'm sure will, in this administration, give him some sort of job security through the lean year. We'll see. I mean, we know it's a prove it year for Monty. We know it's a prove it 2 years for everyone. Maybe we'll do another podcast larger on this, but something that I kind of focus in on is like the coach is only going to be able to do so much. The bigger thing is how they handle free agency, what they do with this number 3 pick in the draft, what direction they want to go in terms of, are we trying to win this year? Are we trying to bring in one of these veteran quarterbacks, or are we going to be patient and maybe draft a quarterback to pair with Jacoby? That'll be telling about what direction Monty sees this thing going in. And then the other part, which I think maybe we could have a larger conversation about, is this is a new era, one way or another, for the Cardinals. We're presuming James Conner will be at the very least released just for contract purposes. Maybe he finds his way back, but financially probably will get released. Budda Baker seems to be on his way out by most indications. He's a free agent. Jalen Thompson.
He's not a free agent.
Is it they're going to waive him or trade him? Why is Budda
an extension last year? So he's under contract for a couple more years, but Jalen Thompson's a free agent.
Why was everyone saying Budda was like selling his house and saying goodbye? Is it like his contract situation they can get out of this year?
I think like Kyler, I think Budda might want to change.
Okay.
And it wouldn't surprise me at this point in his career.
I guess it'd be more of a trade.
Still a rebuild after 3 years. So you can't blame him on that, right? I mean, we all agree. Do we all agree this is still a rebuild after 3 years?
Yeah, I'd say for the most part, yeah.
We're better off as a roster. But like Brett Coleman said, we're the slowest slow burn of a 3-year rebuild ever known to mankind. And like Sam said, you got, this is going to be probably another rough season ahead of us. But the difference is I don't see LaFleur coming in wanting to tank. And I think that he'll give the players every opportunity to win. And I just don't see that, even though there are these enticing quarterbacks for next year. That'd be a huge mistake, in my opinion. If Tank is on the table again, we're screwed. Erase the next 2 or 3 years. If he's coming in like McDonald did to Seattle and saying like I want we want to win now, that's a different story. Go ahead. What do you got?
Yeah, sorry. It would be more trade than a release, just looking at the cap numbers. But it'd be very easy for them to trade him. There's only $6 million in dead cap, all that stuff, and that's why Buddha. That people were talking about Buddha selling his house and everything else.
Yeah.
So James Conner's probably out the door unless he comes back on a lesser deal. Buddha's probably out the door. Kyler is about 80% sure out the door. Kelvin Beachum doesn't have a contract. Jalen Thompson doesn't have a contract. Who are the new leaders of this locker room? Who are the people who are going to take this team and make it theirs going forward? I think, preferably your team captains are guys who have been drafted here and only know Arizona and embrace Arizona in such a way.
Yeah.
I just think that's great leadership candidates in general. So I'm just curious who are going to be those guys, who are going to be the faces of the locker room and the leaders of the locker room going forward. Is that a Zaven Collins? Is that a Trey McBride?
Yes.
Is that potentially a Josh Sweat or a Hajalte Froholt, even though they're free agent signings? I'm curious who those guys are going to be, who are going to galvanize the team and say, hey, there's a leadership vacuum on this team and I'm going to be the one to fill it, or I'm reading the room and sensing I should be the one to fill it type of situation. And maybe we can have a broader conversation about that too, but it is kind of a unique storm of all of these veterans for the Gannon regime who were voted as captains or were perceived as captains and everything else. It seems like those are the guys most likely to move on. And so where does that leave the locker room beyond that? With, again, a lot of young players, only a few guys who have earned contract extensions. Sweat's a very interesting case just because of he's the most productive player on that defense and the elder statesman, even though obviously he comes from Philadelphia. How committed is he to a leadership position? Those are all things that I am just curious to see, because I think that'll be telling about the direction the team is going, even beyond draft picks and free agent signings and everything else.
Yeah. That's excellent. Thank you. And, who's your pick?
You're saying for Super Bowl? I believe in the Seahawks. I mean, I was surprised more people didn't say this going into the playoffs, but once they got that number 1 seed, I thought they were just going to run through the playoffs. I mean, this Seahawks team is so good. Defensively, they're so deep, and they have so many blue chip guys. I just felt like the Seahawks would run through the NFC, and they for the most part they did. I mean, the Rams gave them a little bit of a test, but they led most of the game. I think the Seahawks are the deserving champions. They the best team in football. They've been the best team in football, and I think they will get it done.
All right. So hope is a good thing, guys. We talked about it last time. I can't go into a season anymore at my age saying, like, screw it, we're going to be awful. I got to have hope. And I do. I had a lot of hope rise up in me yesterday listening to Mike LaFleur. I think his head is on right, and I think his heart is in the right place. And I think he is what he says he is. He is authentic. He does want to forge these relationships with the players, and that takes time, obviously. But I think he'll do a really good job at that, and I think he'll want to hold the organization to the kind of integrity that the Rams and the 49ers have, and Seahawks. I mean, they don't talk about tanking there, ever. we've seen it across the NFL of surprise teams that come out of nowhere, like Jacksonville last year. Who knows? Maybe, if we hired Dino Vasso, he's this year's Anthony Campanile. It can happen. I mean, and particularly when you give players hope and a new sense of raison d'etre, a reason for being. So I'm warming up. I'm looking at these hires is very important. Obviously, we're going to discuss that next week on Wednesday. We'll discuss all, this as we go along. But, and my pick's the Patriots. I think Drake May is going to be MVP. And I think Gonzo will slow down Najigba enough that they would. I think the Patriots defense is grossly underestimated. I mean, the big boys up front are going to have their say in this game. So, and maybe call me a homer because I'm delaying my Seahawk friends. I mean, not my Patriots friends, but I do honestly believe that the Patriots are going to win this game. So we'll see what happens there. But thanks for joining us once again. Love to hear your comments and thoughts at Red Rain Blog for Arizona Cardinal fans, AZ Cardinal fans, and here on YouTube in the comment section below. Let us know what you're thinking. What did you think about the LaFleur hire? I know, that there was all the hoopla and the hype that everyone was figuring he was our guy. Well, you got your guy. And what do you think about that? And what are you looking forward to? So in the interim, may you have a wonderful Super Bowl weekend. Enjoy all of it. And the waste management, if you're going, give somebody else your keys. That's all we have to say today on Red Rain.